Okay, it is 5:30, so I will call the meeting to order and ask everyone to please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Just a reminder to the board members, please have your microphones on to help with the live feed. Next item, review of the consent agenda items as listed below.
I move to accept the consent agenda.
We have a motion to approve those items as presented. Do we have a second?
Support.
Any discussion? Okay, hearing none, all in favor? Okay, first up we have the Besser Elementary School presentation. Oh, we didn't approve, sorry. Hold up, we skipped over one, I'm sorry. Thank you, Eric. We need a motion to approve the regular board meeting agenda.
So moved. Support.
Any discussion?
Yes, I wanted to ask that if we're not going to do it today, which probably would be best since Samantha is not with us, we're going to look at policies 9150. That was the one with the policy on school visitors, and then we were also going to look at 0166, which is how we build the agenda and get items on the agenda. So I would like us to extra super for sure get that because we were going to, we had some readings of other policies where we would get these in there, so I'd really like to make sure that we get to consider that next time.
Yeah, I believe we already had moved those to the March one, is that correct? Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah, we just moved all the policy to see.
Yeah, okay, super, thank you.
Thanks. Okay. Anything else? Hearing none, all in favor? Okay, and now, that's our elementary school presentation.
If they need to see the screen, we've got some seats over there to the side.
If you don't mind, please. I always make you move when you come to Besser.
Good evening. My name is Stephanie Hitchcock. I'm the principal of Besser Elementary School. I'd like to welcome our Board of Education, our superintendent, APS administrators, parents, and our community this evening. As you may have noticed walking into our building, you'll see that we're kicking off March's Reading Month. Our theme is Catch the Reading Wave. Honestly, I invite all of you, even after the board meeting, to really just take a moment to walk through our hallways and see all of the work that our staff has put in to create classroom doors with to be part of our themes, our hallways. I invite you to take a moment to do that after the board meeting or as you leave this evening. Our staff, Parent Advisory Council, and students have worked so hard to prepare for March's Reading Month. PAC held a family reading night with celebrity readers last Friday to kick off our month, and we have lots planned throughout the month of March, such as our Scholastic Book Fair. We have Catch the Reading Wave Challenge, where we're taking pledges for the per minutes that our students are reading, and all the donations are going to help pay for a new book vending machine for our school. We have book swap days, we have fun dress-up days, no electronics nights, and fun trivia throughout the month. But tonight, more importantly, I really want to take an opportunity, our students and our staff actually would like to take this opportunity to recognize our Parent Advisory Council, our PAC. Not our PAC, but our Besser families and our community members for all they do to support our school. We appreciate the love, the kindness, and the energy that goes into creating a positive learning environment for our students. And so I'm going to play a video to kind of showcase our appreciation for our PAC and families of Besser.
Elementary has around 400 students in kindergarten through 5th grade, but our community is so much larger than that. Helen Keller said, "Alone we can do so little, but together we can do so much." We want to use this opportunity to acknowledge everyone who has worked together to help us grow, learn, thrive, and become part of an amazing close-knit community. Our students and their families have bonded together to collect non-perishable food items for the Little Food Pantry. In only 10 days, we've collected more than 1,000 food items. Our community has never failed to support our students and staff. Our community also works together to celebrate our veterans. I think that it's important to celebrate Veterans Day because they are serving our country, while we get to sit and have a peaceful life at home. Last year, our Besser PAC raised several $1,000s to make over our school library. The space is fun, inviting, and used for many purposes. The library makeover made the space more interesting. Colin T. said that they always have a good book to read, and Jenna P. said, "I love how everyone always gets a new book to read." PAC also purchased new playground equipment that makes playing easier and more fun. It's nice that the soccer balls don't go through the holes and we don't have to chase down balls anymore. So 5th grader Brian Sharp, we can actually play soccer now, except for CH average. Preston W. also said that it was so nice of them to spend that money so we can play soccer again. Besser PAC frequently organizes fun events for students. Last year they sponsored the 5th grade celebration. Ms. Shepard said the 5th grade celebration was a fantastic and fun afternoon that we were able to spend celebrating our 5th grade Bulldogs before they left for Thunder Bay Junior High. They also sold Besser Bulldog gear and planned a school-wide Cupid Shuffle dance last Valentine's Day. The Scholastic Book Fair takes place twice per year, and parent volunteers organized by the Besser PAC donate their time to make the special event possible. I feel spoiled because my parents give me money to spend at the book fair each year. Thank you for spending your own time so that we can get booked and have the experience of buying things at the book fair. I am thankful for the volunteers. Shared Dason H.
Businesses, parents are members of the community, often support Popcorn Friday at Besser.
This fall, Besser held its first fall festival event. There was a lot of different activities to do and fun costumes, said MVS. Hayden J. said, "I like seeing all the teachers dressed up after school." Our community participates in Spirit Days just to make school a bit more fun. Spirit Week is fun because you can wear crazy stuff and it makes school more fun. You get to be creative with what you wear, said Joe R. the Great. A snowman contest was fun because we got family time together and we got to spend our afternoon together. We love when families participate in challenges at home. This year, Besser hosted its second annual Winter Wonderland, complete with a cookie walk. Winter Wonderland was really fun. My favorite part was writing and decorating our postcards for our tree. My family thought it was really cool, said Brody Y. Miss Metheringham said, "Thank you, PAC and community members, for the Pelican Bites. The younger students utilize them to practice letter and number recognition on their virtual rides. They also been useful for younger students to get a sensory release to regulate their behavior. We love our bikes. When I got my Valentine's, Graham, I felt happy, said Skylar Granny. Thanks to Besser Pack, students received hundreds of Squishmallow, Poppets, and Ring Pops. When I got my Valentine, I felt good. My favorite one was the Squishmallows.
March is Reading Month is an annual event that connects students and families. Students celebrate reading at school and at home. This year's theme, Under the Sea, celebrates how Besser Bulldogs all swim together. Staff members and Besser Pack members work together to decorate after school in late February to make this event for students. Helen Keller said, "Alone we can do so little, but together we can do so much." Besser Pack does everything that they can do to bring us together and help us learn, grow, and thrive. We appreciate everything they do, and we just want to take this opportunity to say thank you.
PAC members and parent volunteers that are here this evening, if you would please stand so we can recognize you. Come on. I'm going to chalk it up to the snow. We would like to cordially invite our parent volunteers and our PAC members to a special luncheon that we will host for you on April 3rd to celebrate all of you for all you do. Thank you for everything that you guys do. You have no idea how much your dedication and your passion and your compassion for our kids and staff means to us. Thank you so much. From the bottom of all of our hearts. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cry this evening.
But we do have like little silly little invites for you. But we also, I want to do a big thanks to Lindsay Shepard, who did the video with our kiddos, our 5th grade students. And also Leslie Shemansky. She made this special sign for you guys for Pat. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Mrs. Hitchcock. Moving on, Mrs. Gauthier, benchmark assessment update. Not quite as fun and exciting as that slideshow, maybe? It does have the wrong year on it. She told us for you. It is the recent one, though.
Okay, I am next after that lovely presentation, and the goal for this presentation is to share with you an update on our benchmark assessments. So there's 2 typos that I did not realize before I printed, and I apologize. But this is an update for February 2023. So I'm just going to click through the slides, and you can follow along. I'm on slide number 2. The purpose of the update is to inform the board about the district's progress towards achieving benchmark assessment goals that were identified in September of 2023. That says 2021. September of 2022. Oh my gosh. Sorry. Well, I'll fix that afterwards. So in this fall, by September 15th, we are required by Public Act of 2021, Section 98B, to set benchmark goals. A part of the laws that came out in response to the COVID pandemic, this is one of them, where we have to give a benchmark assessment 2 times per year in all grades K through 8, and we have to identify a type of assessment or a type of measure to monitor progress in grades 9 through 12. So that's the first portion of this law. The second portion of this law is that we are required to update the board in February, and we're also required to update the board at the end of the school year. So we give update on the progress of the goals that we set in the fall and middle of the year, and then we give a year snapshot at the end of the school year. So linked in this document, which you'll get a copy of this digitally, is the complete goal setting document. That is all the information that is in that document is in this slideshow, and it's just we've added the data to it. That goal setting document includes the goals that we've set for the grade levels and the assessments that we're using. Our mode of instruction is another piece that we're required to confirm every 6 months, and that is we are face-to-face as our primary mode of instruction. So when we set goals for this purpose, we set broad goals based on the multi-tiered system of support framework. When we get to working at the administrator level and the teacher level, when we talk about data, we set very specific goals that are tied to their performance. So these goals are broad. They're the same as last year's, and I will give you a little bit of information on what multi-tiered systems of support is and why we set our goals for that. So MTSS is what it's known as, is a framework that helps educators put a system to how we identify strategies to support children, how we use assessment to monitor how those strategies work, and what the barometer is for success. So the research for multi-tiered systems of support says that our universal core instruction, that can be in academics or behavior, should meet the needs of 80% of our students. So that is in the world of, let's say, reading. Our universal core instruction are our grade level standards and the resource that we use to teach that, which at the elementary level is benchmark literacy, and at the secondary level it is from a company called Savas. So what the research says is that using that tool and solid instruction, we should meet the needs of 80% of our kids. But 15% of our kids might need a little more because they come in with less. And so that's where we identify targeted small group instruction or intervention. And that's based on the assessments that we take, that we give students 3 times a year. Also our formative assessments. How are they doing? How are they meeting the standards that we set out? What the framework says is that 15% of kids are expected to not succeed with just Tier 1 instruction or universal core instruction. So they need extra. They need some small group intervention that's conducted with progress monitoring and is in a controlled setting. Even with Tier 2 supports, what the research states or this framework states is that 5% of students will need intense individual intervention. That could be in the form of an IEP, a Section 504 plan, or it could be a general education student who has an intense gap from what's expected. So all this is monitored by data and is a barometer for us to say how well are we doing. So this framework, the research behind this framework says if you have less than 80% of students succeeding with universal core instruction, it can be a stress to your system. So the higher percentages at Tier 2 and Tier 3 It creates a larger stress to the resources that you have within your building, both human, fiscal, and with our physical resources that we use. And there's areas in both behavior and academics that we see this because of the number of students who need more intensive needs than what our universal core instruction can provide. So in thinking about these broad goals, remember we have very specific goals at the school level and the teacher level or classroom level. We use this as a barometer. So you'll see 80% of students will make growth in the middle of the year. At the end of the year, you'll see 80% of students will achieve benchmark because that's the goal that we're trying to set. So I wanted to give that background knowledge as to why and where we came up with the percentages. And then I will dig into each of the grade levels. We are required to report on both math and reading. So in our K-12 reading goals, the kindergarten and first grade assessment that we use is called Acadience. Acadience is a universal screener that measures early literacy skills that are tied to reading development. They're timed assessments, and the intention of it is it's a brief, reliable measure that we give to students to identify students who might be at risk. So think of like a flagging system, a screener for, you might step on the scale and say, I'm overweight. And then I might go to the doctor and see that there's other factors that are associated with me being overweight. A screener is intended to do that. It gives you a flag of something's going on, but you need to dig a little deeper to figure out really what the true cause is. So the goal statement for kindergarten is 80% of students will improve performance from fall to winter. So I just circled the subtests that the students take, and those are all subtests that are tied to reading skills that lead to reading connected text and comprehending text. So the results this year, 66% of students improve. So that doesn't look at achievement, that looks at just growth. It doesn't look at did I go from at risk to some risk, it just looks at growth because we're hoping that kids are making gains and closing the gap. So that next page, where all the pie charts are, this is directly connected to that MTSS triangle, even though it's a pie chart. So when you look at the green, that is the score that you have. The students who achieved that score are meeting benchmark, and that's stating that they are being successful with universal core instruction. The yellow is our tier 2 students who need that small group intervention, and the red is our intensive interventions. So remember 80, 15, 5. These are not percentages that you're seeing, and we have growth to make there. The first, what you're looking at on the left-hand side, the first one is district-wide Alpena Public Schools. On the left-hand side is the fall percentages, the fall breakdown. The benchmark increases because reading skills should increase over time. And so then in the winter, when they're assessed again at a higher standard, those are our percentages. So we went from 48% of students successful in universal core instruction to 54%. You'll notice some high spots in proficiency with Besser Elementary School. Hinks had a great deal of growth, as did Wilson Elementary. On the next page is our first grade results. So the same goal, 80% of students will make gains, and we're at 56% of students who improved. I do need to mention that these subtests that they take, they're totaled into a composite score. So you can look at each individual subtest and see how did they score. Did they score at risk, some risk, or benchmark? But what's reported in those pie charts, that's their composite score, where they add up all of the subtests and say how did they do in their early literacy skills as a whole. So again, we have the pie charts that compare the middle of the fall to the middle of the year across the district. with some high points being Wilson Elementary and Sanborn Elementary. So the other piece of this...
Megan, can I ask a question?
Oh, absolutely.
Lincoln went backwards on that one.
Lincoln went backwards. So my belief is that kids don't lose their skills. They might just have a bad testing day. They might just not be there. But the bar increases here. And so with the winter of first grade, I really wait to see how the end of the year looks. So these are timed assessments. So you sit down with an assessor and you have a timer and you're given directions. With the skills that you saw in kindergarten, we're not expecting them to read connected text. But in first grade, winter of first grade, they are expected to read a grade level passage that looks pretty intimidating. It looks different than the books that they read because it's on one page, similar to your agenda. So we see scores dip because of that experience from a testing standpoint, and then we see kids rebound a little bit more at the end of the year. So regressing when there's not that big of a change, I wonder, what's going on with the testing day, the testing environment, how'd it go? Is this a good measure? These are questions that we ask when we determine intervention, when we work with teachers, because you can't lose skills, but if you're not keeping pace, then you might not meet the next benchmark. But that first grade, middle of the year is very difficult for them.
In the end, the variable, that's how many students, right?
Yes.
So like when you look at Lincoln, even though their percentage wasn't great, the difference was one student. It's a smaller population, so.
Yep, one student makes a big difference. Yep, thanks for pointing that out.
One student, that's the amount of students they tested, the N?
Yes.
Okay.
So another requirement was to, and then we did not do this last year because it wasn't a part of the guidance under the law, but under the law we are required to report on subgroups. So you have a series of charts, and we compared the subgroups that are statistically significant for APS, which is gender, special education, and economically disadvantaged. And for economically disadvantaged students, we measure that by those who are free and reduced lunch. So what you have are the next 3 pages are the breakdown. I'm just going to go through those quickly, but I did put the middle of the year cut point. So this is a criterion reference test. The bar always stays the same level. And so either you go above the bar, you meet the bar, or you don't. So middle of the year, kindergarten is 122, and first grade is 130. So males versus females, there's not really a statistical difference there. The next one is special ed versus non-special ed, which you can see our special education students are underperforming compared to their non-special education peers. And then our economically disadvantaged, and this assessment is underperforming our non-economically disadvantaged. But I was putting this together and I was like really stuck for a second on the all. So if you look at our percentage, our average composite score of all of our students for kindergarten is 124, and the benchmark is 122. So how can our average score with all of our kids be higher than the benchmark? Why doesn't our data look better? Same with first grade. Our average composite score is 133, and the benchmark cut point is 130. So I know we've talked about data in the past, and our anecdotal gut is we have such a range. We have such a range of needs, and really in our data conversations with teachers and administrators is how do we support this range of needs? So this prompted me to look a little deeper into each of the students' scores, and I just wanted to share this achievement gap here. So the table that you're looking at looks at, what I did is I divided the kids those who are at or above benchmark, I figured out the average composite score of those students and the range. And then those who are below benchmark, I figured out their average score and then the range. So if you look at kindergarten, the average of students who are at or above benchmark, the average composite score is 166 compared to 76. And the range, so remember the composite score is the points of all the subtests that you take added up. So the higher the points means the more skills you have. The range is from 0 to 256. And that's a difference with our average composite score of 90. When you look at first grade, it's even more staggering. Our average is 207 for our students who are at or above benchmark, compared to the average of 67 for our students who are below, and that's a difference of 140, with a range of 0 to 450 points. So my guts tell me that in our other assessments, which I haven't had time to dig into, we also see this range. We see a good number of kids who are high performing at or above average, and then the kids who are below average don't have as many skills. But that gap is huge, and that gap exists in every classroom. So when we're working with teachers on how to, improve our data, their first question is, how do I meet the needs of kids who are several grade levels behind? And when you're in kindergarten and first grade, that's very significant, to several grade levels ahead, and when there's not a lot of kids in the middle. So that's something that we're going to continue to grapple with, and that, there are bright spots in our data, but that is something that is very significant that we need to continue to discuss and support our teachers with, and make sure we have the right resources to do so. The next assessment is what we use for both reading and math in grades 2 through 8. Now this is a norm referenced assessment, and it is a computer adaptive. So if I answer incorrectly, so it starts at grade level. So I'm in 3rd grade, I start taking my test, I start answering grade level questions incorrectly. It's going to level down questions until it hits the just right spot. Just the same as if I answer questions correctly, it's going to keep going up until it finds the just right spot. So every student's testing experience is different, and at the end they get a RIT score, which is called Ready for Instruction, and that can be connected to a national norm. And so you have that ranking of what your score means. So this is a benchmark assessment that is meant more than just to flag students who are at risk. It's meant to give you information on student performance on a range of grade level standards. So in our reading, the goal statement is 80% of students will meet or exceed projected growth. So if I am scoring in the at-risk area of low, I score, let's just say, 120. I don't know if that score makes sense, but I'm just for the sake of example. If I score 120 in the fall and my risk level is at risk, I'm in the low area, if NWA will project growth and state that your score the next time you test in the fall will be this, and I project that based on all the other students in your grade level who scored this score on the fall test. So if I meet projected growth of that what NWA set, it just means I'm following the trend. I didn't close the gap. I'm still exactly where I was. But if I exceed that, if I exceed the projected growth, then I'm making more progress towards closing the gap and getting out of my risk level and into a higher level. So meet or exceed is a great place to start, but with our lower performing students, we want to see them exceed. So you'll see the results there. If you look just quickly at the bar graph, the diamonds represent the projected growth that NWA says. With this grade level, scoring at this average RIT, we project for you to have this score. that means you're just going to stay the same and progress like what is normed. If you go above, like in our grade 2, you'll see that they exceeded projected growth. So although we didn't meet the 80%, notice that in second grade, our growth was, the percentile ranking for our growth was 97th percentile. In third grade, the growth that our students made was in the 89th percentile. And then in fourth grade, the 45th percentile, which is above average. 37th is pretty darn close to average, but still below because we consider 40th percentile average. So while we did not hit that 80%, our growth was very strong. 6th, 7th, and 8th, they test 2 times in a year, and so their testing data will be reported in the spring. So that next table is for your information. It's not necessarily tied to the goal, but what it gives you is a snapshot of achievement. So what that table shows you is what the mean RIT for the grade level. So they took all the students in the grade level and said, what's the average RIT, that ready for instruction score? And then they gave it a percentile ranking. So if you see the achievement percentile in the winter is all above average, which is really great to see. 44, 53, and 40. The 40th percentile is that start of average. And so our achievement this winter is strong and is getting to where we need it to go. We do see a bit of regression in our 5th grade from 42 to 40, and that's something that we definitely don't want to see. Any questions on that? It's a lot of information. So subgroup performance, I'm just going to kind of go through this. There wasn't any statistically significant changes or differences between male and female. Our special ed students are underperforming in NWEA compared to their non-special education peers. And this I double check and triple checked. So our economically disadvantaged students have outperformed our non-economically disadvantaged students in this case. So I was like, head scratcher. So the subgroup really was a good activity to go through to really think about some of the ahas that I had. So the head scratcher with this is I think that we have a large enough percentage of students who are free and reduced lunch at our elementary level that it's over half of our population. So I don't know if that makes sense or not, but with the higher the numbers, I think the more the harder it is to compare, because it just is who we are. Okay, so 9-12, our goal is related to credits earned. So the goal statement is the way we do a credit audit, it's the number of credits attempted versus the number of credits earned. So even though this goal statement is tied to credits, this does reflect our students who took any English graduation requirement, and then a little bit later I'll be talking about math. So the goal was that 85% of Michigan English Language Arts credits attempted in semester 1 will be earned by AHS and ACES students. And the results of this were 82% of credits attempted were earned in ELA in semester 1. And that was the exact same percentage as last year. So in our subgroups, you'll see some differences between male and female, and some differences in our special ed performance. Okay, moving on to math. So this year, instead of doing the MDE, the Michigan Department of Education early math assessment, which was a terrible testing experience for our kids and did not yield very useful data for us, we went with our Imagine Math benchmark assessment, which is something that we already do, and it's tied to their work in Imagine Math. They get to practice every day when they work in Imagine Math on their skills and work to improve their benchmark assessment. So before I get into it real quick, their benchmark assessment gives a quantile score. So a quantile in math is like a Lexile level in reading. And so it uses the same scale to measure both the child's mathematical ability and the difficulty of the math materials they encounter. So quantile measures help you find math skills and concepts that are at your child's level. So the emerging, that scale I included in there, the emerging at the bottom, it says EM, it's hard to read, I think EM 200Q, EM 100Q. When that translates into the data dig, it is reflected by a negative number because it means early mathematicians. So they haven't hit the quantile level yet. So it does come out as a negative number. It does not mean a bad thing. It means a good thing. So our goal statement for kindergarten and first grade is that 80% of students will improve from fall to winter. We did great here, 87% of kindergarten and 81% of first grade. And my assumption behind this is that they're working in Imagine Math all the time. They're working on lessons that are tied to their level. They're used to the platform. It's not a timed assessment. It's something that they do, and it doesn't feel like a test to them. And so that's informative as well. All of these are just a snapshot. So I just, to break down the quantile norms by subgroup, I did put in what the expectations are. So if I'm in kindergarten in the spring, if I score at the 50th percentile, that is 115 quantile. And if I score at the 90th, that's 190 quantile. And first grade is listed there as well. So when there's EM, remember that that's reflected as a negative number. So you'll see that chart, we have an EM level of 77.2 for all. And at the end of the school year, it's expected that they would be 115. So they're ahead of where they need to be, which is exciting. There is a difference. Our special ed students are underperforming compared to, I'm ahead of myself. There's not much of a difference between male and female. There is a difference between our special ed versus their non-special education peers. And then in one grade, actually in both grades, our non-economically disadvantaged outperformed their economically disadvantaged peers. But overall, our results for quantiles, our proficiency in those assessments are strong, which is very encouraging. Moving on to NWEA. So we're looking at the same met or exceeded projected growth in math. You'll see from that visual that we have 3 grade levels who've met or exceeded, actually 3 grade levels who exceeded and 1 who just was pretty darn close. The growth that they demonstrated is awesome for second, third, and fourth grade, from the 99th percentile and second and third to the 73rd percentile in fourth grade. Our fifth grade did not have as strong as growth as the other grade levels. So to break that down in percentages, while growth is something that is what we need to celebrate, it is also one indicator. We also have to look at achievement. So if you look at the achievement percentile ranking on that table, in the winter, our second grade's at the 35th percentile. Remember, 40 is what we want to hit or above, but they went from the 15th to the 35th, which is amazing. Our second and third grades are above average, and our fifth grade has a pretty low achievement percentile of the 22nd percentile ranking. So males versus females, not a significant difference. Our special ed continued to underperform compared to their peers. And then in this one, we have some economically disadvantaged students outperforming economically disadvantaged, and then in one grade level, it's reverse. So not sure if that's a trend that we can really rely upon, or if that's a subgroup we need to continue to look at. But special ed is consistent all the way through. And to sum up this long presentation, just finished with high school math. So again, the same, we wanted to see 85% of credits attempted earned by AHS and ACES students, and we saw 78%. That note, though, is 167 students are not in this data because they're in math pathways and they don't receive their credit until the end of the year.
Megan, real quick question.
Yeah.
Can you
So,
get up to the
oh,
microphone?
I'm sorry. Real quick question. So this isn't actual level of proficiency, this is just if they took the class and passed it?
Correct.
Okay.
So,
So they could have gotten
they
C
can-
minus in the class, and we're still counting that
as earning credit.
Okay.
It goes as low as a D minus. So if I get a D minus, then I can earn a credit.
I'm sorry. Do we actually have levels of like proficiency, like where they actually are on that?
We could do a grade point audit
Yeah.
to tie to that. And if you'd like to see that, that does make sense because I've been talking about growth and proficiency together.
I mean, just passing a class, there's a big range there between a D minus and an A. You know,
There's
if you count as
absolutely a
proficiency,
big
just
range.
passing a class,
Yep.
I don't know that that's really useful data, is it?
Well, it means they're on track for graduation.
But are they proficient when they do graduate?
Yeah, so that is something that, you know, if I'm not really invested in my social studies course because I am, you know, an auto lab and that's what makes me want to come to school every day, we do see that. We do see core areas dropping because we do have kids who are interested in the trades and, you know, what their success is when they graduate, as long as they earn their credits and they leave with a, you know, auto mechanic certificate and ready to start a business, that is a measure of success too. So there are those components.
True, but that's also a little bias against the special, you know, the trades. You know, if we're looking at math and English, which is proficiency that every student should have, I mean, an A versus a D minus is quite significant.
Absolutely.
And so, I mean, I don't think we should be, you know, throwing our skilled trades under the bus here because that's their bent.
No, and I'm not. I'm just trying to give like the ranges of success. So we definitely do look at earning credits because you've got to earn a certain number in 4 years in order to graduate. But just wanted to give that kind of range. Of course, no.
Thank you.
Trades require a lot of skill. So the next is just the performance across, or the subgroup comparison. So this is just the percentage. We see our economically disadvantaged coming in a little less, and our male students as well.
You said the fifth grade was struggling in the math and in the English. Did I catch that correctly?
So in reading, in the reading assessment, their achievement percentiles with an average, their growth was not as strong. So when you look at the percentile ranking of their growth, that was the 37th percentile. So we want to, which is lower than average, not much. But overall, their achievement percentile, the 40th percentile starts at average range, and so they're right at average. Their performance, the fifth grade performance in math, the achievement is much less.
That was just interesting why that grade was having an issue with both.
Mm-hmm.
Was there any thoughts there from your end? Is it?
You know, with the reading achievement percentile with the grade level, again, there's the range. This is just the average, right? With the grade level, I'm happy to see 40th percentile. with math, when we look back at the years, so they were in 3rd grade, the year that we were, where classrooms had to be quarantined, where we went remote. And then they were in 2nd grade when they missed that last little bit. So in 3rd grade, this is when they start and really hit multiplication and division, and they introduce fractions and decimals, which is the basis for 4th and 5th grade. So my wondering is if we were able to, if they were able to get those skills that they needed for the 5th grade content. We do see just in the fall data, our math performance at the middle school level is also below average as well. And just thinking about that higher level skills in math that they're having to engage in. And if they don't have the skills from the previous grade levels and from their math development, what we know about math is that you can't skip that skill. So if you are still working on something that's, let's say, is a 3rd grade level skill, you can't skip that in order to learn your 7th grade content. You have to go back. And that's what we're struggling with right now in the classroom when you have kids who are in that boat, but you have to teach the grade level skills. How do we intervene with kids who've missed their skills, their developmental skills that lead up to their grade level content? How do we do that when there's such a range in the classroom? So that's one of my wonderings, but other than that, we have to dig into where we are with our 5th grader, with all of our kiddos. Our buildings are just finishing up their winter data reviews where all of the teachers have met to review their data. They set SMART goals, and they've identified students that that are close to achieving benchmark to pay extra special attention to, talking about intervention for those who are significantly behind. So we, are meeting with our principals in the next couple of weeks to hear what are the SMART goals, what do they look like, where do our classrooms fall, what are we working on, and then we'll revisit those in the spring.
How do these numbers correspond statewide and nationally? Do we know yet? Are we seeing that across the board with 4th, 5th, and the kids that had the big loss of class time?
So with NWA specifically, those achievement percentiles are national. I can't pull just Michigan NWA data, but they have the 2020 norms. They've adjusted the math norms because our scores across the nation have dipped so low that the norms that were set before are too high. So we're operating on the norms that were set in 2020, which is a lower mean RIT per grade level.
So we've lowered the norms? Did I catch that?
So NWEA, yes, so they take, and I'm not a statistician, but they basically set grade level norms based on the mean RIT, so that mean score that they get. The averages were going down, and so they had to adjust the norms to reflect what was happening in the nation with all the schools who take this test.
So what you're saying is we've lowered the bar because our test scores weren't adding up?
So yes, as a company, they've lowered the bar because the bar was lowered by what was the trend in the scores. So it's different than a criterion reference where we're like, oh, let's just lower it a little bit, see if they can jump above it. They take and say, what is average? What's average for grade levels in their score for this assessment this time of year? And so the average of all the scores were regressing so significantly that they updated the norms.
That's quite troubling.
It is.
So obviously the 5th graders are in trouble mathematically. Is there something that we could do? Because you're very correct when math is a building, and I think back to my math in algebra, and I struggled a little bit in algebra, and then the rest of high school was rough at times. Is there something drastic that could be done to bring them back up to speed? Because that's concerning.
Mm-hmm.
For the rest of their career here.
For sure. And it starts early, right? It starts in elementary. So I can tell you what we are doing, but I don't have like the magic wand where I know the answer, and I know there's more that we can do. So at the elementary this year, our focus for professional development outside of PD days has been to go through every unit before our grade levels teach the unit. So our grade level teachers come together and they say they've identified priority standards. So what are the most important standards that we have to teach in each unit? And let's go through every lesson and identify where those show up. So where do we need to make sure that we work towards mastery? Where can we just lightly touch and know that that's either a skill that's going to come later? And then what can we skip? So that's really important when we have 11 to 12 sections across our county of each grade level. We need to make sure that kids are having the same exposure to the priority standards. When you open up a teacher's edition of any curriculum resource, there is so much in there that you have to choose what you focus on. And so we had a coordinated approach in doing that. We've implemented, which I did not report on here because it wasn't tied to our goal, but this winter we implemented what's called the Delta Math Screener. And it's a screener. The purpose is to flag students, remember like our early literacy screener, on their success and the priority standards from the grade level before. So we know that you can't skip anything in math, it's sequential. And so in second grade, I'm being measured on, do I know my first grade priority standards? And so we have data on how kids are doing. Either they know it, they need some support, or tier 2, that small group intervention, or they need intensive support. And with that, our lessons, reading interventions to go with each standard. And so our Title I teachers are starting to pull students for intervention and intervening on those priority standards. In addition, if classroom teachers were ready, we didn't want to push that right away because it was a new assessment. They can start to use that data in their classroom in addition to NWEA to start to look at those grade level skills behind, in the year behind. So also, we are looking at pre-algebra differently at our high school. So I met with our pre-algebra teacher, our math coach, and our administrator who oversees math to think about pre-algebra differently. It's not, let's use the same textbook and just hit just a little bit of it. It's, let's think about what gaps you're missing. So she's piloting, and then we're moving forward with a new approach for pre-algebra where she's given the Delta Math Screener. It goes all the way up to Algebra 2. She's given the Delta Math Screener to all of her students, and then she's intervening on the standards that her students are missing, and she's doing small group instruction in a high school setting. She started that course for semester 2 with just talking about how the fact that you can learn math just because you haven't been successful doesn't mean you can't learn it. They spent a week on team building. And it is so cool to see her classroom because they're responding really well. There's a couple kids who have been like, they chart their progress on their performance of standards. There's a couple of kids who've said, I've never done good on a math test before, but they're targeting individual gap areas. In response to that, we are using that assessment on all 8th grade students so we can place kids appropriately in pre-algebra. And also thinking about how do we use that, the results of that assessment to target some after-school work. So those are just some things that we're doing, but really trying to grapple with how do we intervene when they're missing skills that they need to have that are several grade levels behind.
And what do the teachers say they need? I mean, they've been doing this. They're the ones that are in the classroom. You know, if you got 4th and 5th graders that are not meeting the benchmark, whether, likely COVID contributed to that. There's no doubt about that. But if they're not meeting what they need to be at this point, and we allow them to move on to the next grade, and they don't have that building block, we're just setting them up for failure. Mm-hmm. This age group appears to be, kind of low-hanging fruit, if you will, where we can focus resources, and in the people that I would think that would have the best input would be the teachers that are teaching the classrooms.
Absolutely.
And So, I guess my question would be, what do they need?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so when we meet in our data reviews, they pose the question of what do we do when we have such a gap, with such a range of learners? And we're still working on the answer to that question. We have a high quality resource that is our universal core curriculum at K-5 level that we're really digging deeper into to make sure we're hitting those priority standards. So from a resource standpoint, as far as universal goes, we don't need to improve there, but we do need a stronger system for the data that guides the priority, like how kids are doing, right? We need to figure that out. So teachers need to be able to say, okay, I know that these kids are struggling in grade level content, but now I need to know what to focus on. So that assessment is part of it, but we've got to carve out time in the classroom for them to work on intervention and enrichment as well, and right now that time is not carved out. So time, I think, is something that our teachers would say. Our curriculum work that's taking place at the secondary level, where they're looking at priority standards, as they're digging into what's success in Algebra 1 and what's success in geometry, they're starting to question whether their resource meets their needs. Because of the level at which they address those priority standards. So that's something that the teachers are like, is this something we need to look at, is identifying a new resource to hit more, to be able to have a stronger universal instruction. There's a saying that you can't intervene your way out of a problem. So when you think about that MTSS triangle, if we have let's say 50% of our kids who aren't scoring well, that can't be solved with just with intervention, with somebody coming and saying, here, I'm going to, spend 20 minutes a day tutoring you, or here, I'm going to spend 3 days a week. It has to be at the foundational level where we have a system, and then it has to be in addition with intervention, and that's something that we had a strong start in. Probably it was before I came on board with intervention time that was built in during the day for teachers, and it's something that we got to get back to because our data definitely demonstrates that we need it.
You mentioned carving out time, and that was one of my thoughts. Is there something that could be dropped in 5th grade to focus on this for the last 4 months of the school year here? Or is it 3, whatever, to alleviate this before it gets to be a disaster?
Sure. So
is there ways to give permission for
absolutely, that? Absolutely. And, we have some teacher teams and schools doing some creative things with, how to respond to that Delta Math screener in the classroom. But it is something that we started in the winter that I'm very sensitive to, of not trying to. In the fall, they did made their goals, their SMART goals on NWA data. In the winter, we started Delta Math assessment. So if they have a system for their NWA data, I didn't want to have them change for for Delta. And so we do have some teacher teams who are working on, specifically in 5th grade, using those Delta Math interventions. And then we have teachers in every grade level who've set NWA goals, and really thinking about how do we carve out time for this. What the best practice, what research states for math instruction is that 60 minutes should be dedicated to grade level universal time. So Tier 1 instruction, 60 minutes, and then an additional 30 minutes. So carving out an additional 30 minutes every day, we're going to have to think about that. And when we meet with principals to talk about how did the SMART goal setting go for our winter data review, that is something very important to talk about. What can we take off teachers' plates in order to focus on this? We do have standards that we're expected to meet in the 4 content areas, which is something that is why I say that teachers have a harder job than rocket scientists, because they have to hit everything and still work with 24 little humans and try to address their needs. So that's something that is super important for us to talk about and think about. What do we spend our time on, and how do we prioritize this? Any other questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Megan. Okay. Next up, the Federal Food Service Program information.
Okay. So our food service program has its own fund, and by guidelines with the state, we're not allowed to transfer money out of that fund for other uses. It's dedicated solely to the food service program. So they have their own fund balance, and when I uploaded the FID, the Financial Information Database, in the fall, after our audit was complete for last year, it was found that they have an excess fund balance. You're only allowed to keep a certain amount according to federal guidelines, because our food service is considered a federal program due to the amount of federal income that it supports it. So we need to spend that down. And Besser needed a new stove because their stove bit the dust here. So we have a new stove lined up to purchase for here. We purchased it through APS, which is one of our major pre-bid consortiums. So we did not need to go out to bid for it. We've also have lined up purchasing warming ovens for all of the schools, and then once we get those done, we will look at how much more we need to spend down for this account. I know it seems kind of, I don't know. To me, you're supposed to build your bank up, but in all of the funds, I know. In all of the funds, it's hard to not do that, because my gut is always wanting to protect the district from financial, but this is a federal guideline, so we have to abide by it. And also with our general fund, the state, once you get to a certain point, they're like, hey, spend that money. So this is just the food service one, and the reason why is because it's a federal program.
Mary, is it the 28,000,
Yep,
that's how much is extra right now?
Yeah, yeah. So we just spend that down and a little bit more, because at the end of this year, we'll probably be putting more money into that fund balance, because we're not going to, probably not going to exceed the revenue. So we'll have revenue to put in there, so we need to plan and look at those budgets. But at this point in time, we're doing what we need to do, what we've been ordered to do by the state. Kudos to the maintenance department. No, I mean, seriously, our custodial crew and our maintenance crew work very hard to keep everything running. We have boilers that were, what, from the 50s, you know, that we're still running. And I mean, it's amazing to see what they have kept up and kept running and everything, and it, you know, and of course, everything eventually hits an end of life. So, and that was the stove here, because it didn't make any sense to try and repair it anymore.
Do the food service people have a list or a need list?
Kurt does.
Kurt
I
does?
mean, Nick does, sorry. Nick's our food service director.
Okay.
So, and that's where the warming ovens came in. They need that. And then one of the buildings, I think it might be the junior high, that they're looking at getting a new dishwasher, because that one's not performing very well, so.
Okay. Any questions? No? All right, thank you, Mary. Okay. Now, am I correct in assuming, did we already approve the consent agenda? items, that's what okay, so we kind of just skipped that, all right, that's what the first motion was. So we already approved those consent agenda items originally. Oh, jeez.
Oh.
Okay. We are at the first opportunity for citizens and delegations to address the board. Do we have any letters today or anything to be read? Okay, no letters to be read. Okay, no one?
Real quick, I know, I'm not taking your time before the approval. On page 2 of, was it the regular meeting, Stacy? Or the special meeting? There's a section of the minutes that are incorrect. It is page 4 of 7 of the February 20th special meeting. On top, it says, there's a bulleted list, and it says building KIP, and then in parentheses, it says knowledge is power, and that actually stands for key identified personnel.
Okay, so hearing no one coming up for public comment, and then we did have a change then on those February 20th minutes. Do we need a new motion to approve them now, or?
Probably should.
Yeah,
With that.
with the change, yep. Any other changes? Thank you for noticing that. Okay, so we will need a new motion to approve the consent agenda items with that correction on the February 20th special meeting minutes. Anyone willing to offer a motion?
So moved.
Thank you.
Support.
Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none, all in favor, show of hands. All right, so moved. Okay, business requiring board action. It's a little bit different tonight, just since we had to cancel our meeting on Monday, so hopefully everyone had time to review, and I know Leslie sent out phone numbers for making phone calls to reach out to ask questions, so thank you for doing that. The first item, business requiring board action, consideration of the agreement to collect 2023 summer taxes.
So traditionally, we've had an agreement with the city to collect summer taxes versus winter taxes. It just helps with our cash flow throughout the school year. So we collect only taxes on the city parcels during the summer, and the rest of the townships are the regular winter one. We've been doing this for several years. The agreement includes an increase because of inflation. Increase of 8.7% based on the inflation rate. The last agreement was 88.49 cents per parcel. Anna Soik from the city is proposing 98.11 cents per parcel. So that's the agreement before you, is that increase. In 2022, we had 5,471 parcels, so our bill for this was $4,529.79. 2023 parcels, she did not have the count yet, because it changes, fluctuates if somebody splits parcels or whatever, so she did not have the count for me. If I base it on the prior year parcel count, our bill for this year will be $5,367.60.
Okay, so like Mary said, this is pretty standard. We've done this multiple times. So we will need a motion to enter into agreement with the treasurer of the city of Alpena to collect the district's 2023 summer property tax levy of 100% for the collection fee of .9811 cents per parcel.
I'll offer that motion.
Support.
Any discussion? All right, all in favor? Show of hands. Okay, thank you. Motion moves. The next item up, consideration of the asbestos abatement bid. Motion to award the asbestos abatement contract for the base amount bid of $191,000 to Total Environmental Services for the asbestos abatement work needed at Besser. Kurt.
Good evening. Mary probably won't let me come to these meetings anymore, but seriously, if you need a boat anchor for the summer, you will find a 1968 stove at the junkyard. As soon as that new one comes, that's where you will find it. I'm going to go rogue here for a second while I'm on that path already. Just to kind of recap and catch up on a few things. It's been a little while. That roof railing project that we spoke of before and was approved, that was fully completed. $0 change value. I believe it was like $148,000, so that went well. Completed, no issues there. Also, if you recall from the fall, the asphalt replacement bid, if you remember it correctly, in the HS front oval, we had talked about, the what ifs. There was the base bid for that was $66,800. Looking back, the board had approved, some of you may not have been here, some of you might have been sitting in the crowd at that time, but I'll kind of paint a picture here. There was a lot of what ifs when we got into that. What is the sub-base going to look like? What are the manholes going to look like? The storm drains. So the base bid, again, came in at $66,800. The total amount approved was potentially $81,800. And a lot of that was like square yardage, material replacement, compaction, $100 an hour to replace storm drains or to work on those type of items. We ended up, I'll thank the crew, I'll thank Simon and Dennis Irwin and Rick Page, a couple of the maintenance guys. We actually reworked some of the storm drains, liquid grouted them. We were able to do that, save that with our own funds. So the total amount expensed was actually $67,700. So from the base bid, we were only about $900 higher than that. So again, we appreciate the on the fly. I don't know if you were there. I think there was a dance that weekend when Goodrich was finally out paving when the 5-day rain quit. But it's a level of comfort we have going into those jobs like that with a little bit of a cushion running into the what ifs, and we always try to look out for that. But obviously we don't just spend if we have it and have the approval. So pretty happy the way that turned out. Okay, so you saw, again, we have Nova Environmental as our third-party air monitoring company looking over this asbestos bid and contract as well. There were two bidders for this job. I believe there was a total of 5 contractors that came for the walkthrough. So you see Quality Environmental Services came in at $194,000 for their base bid. Total Environmental came in at $178,000. With any construction project or bid like you've seen done in the past, there were post-bid interviews done. Both companies believe they had everything in line. There's also a letter here confirming that from Total Environmental Services, stating they believe they are capable of doing a job and they're satisfied with the quote that they gave us. Along with that bid, I will note, there are 2 alternates, and some of that is to grind non-ACM. So there's 2 different types of glues. Here at Besser, there's a lot of asbestos-containing glue. Not only does the floor tile contain asbestos, but so does the glue, which holds it down. There's a couple small areas where the glue does not contain asbestos. But it's kind of a while we're at it, and if we're going from 1960 flooring and glue, it usually behooves us, once we tear the flooring up, to have that ground down smooth, and start fresh, especially when we're putting in like a luxury vinyl tile flooring, so you don't see irregularities in the floor. We'll grind it smooth. So we probably will move forward with that alternate and aim to have that in the approval here. Also, the alternate 2 is the pipe insulation in the main hallway. Some of the pipe insulation in this building needs to be removed for this project coming up for the summer. This is all for the bond work that will be happening here too. I should have mentioned that in the beginning. Some of it does, however, it's a while we're at it type effect. You know, while we're at it and set up, should we get rid of the rest of it? And that's what we looked at here with the alternate, which equates to $9,800, which to us seems to make sense. So, also in this bid, aligning with what I had mentioned, talking about the paving job that we just did, there is a $10,000 allowance in here. So it's just another little buffer zone that we've added in there. It doesn't have to be used, but if we start to tear out some of the heating systems, some of the unit vents, the cabinetry, we know there's certain amounts of asbestos, but if they run into things unsuspected, it's on the fly when they're set up. That buffer zone is in there just to keep the project moving, because mind you, the asbestos abatement, that is the start of the project. It's slated for 2 days after school gets out, so it's pretty tough to, wait or even call for a special board meeting and bother everyone with that. I think they're pretty thorough here as far as that goes. I don't see needing much of that. I'll knock on wood, but you never know. So, any questions? I was thinking back this afternoon in my office, trying to reflect back at what Ella White was, because Ella White's a comparable school. Ella White, while I didn't have time to pull that out and actually look at the number, I think it was probably about half of this. But mind you, a lot of the mastic wasn't asbestos containing. When you get into that, there's so much more involved. When you go into a room, if it's just asbestos floor tile, sometimes you just line the walls with plastics, put air filtration devices out the windows, pull in fresh air, keep it wet, things like that. But when you have to bring in a machine and literally grind, 1/8 inch to 1/4 inch of concrete along with that glue, the rooms are fully enclosed, so they literally line the entire room with plastic, except for what's to be ground. With that, there's a lot more notifications to the state. You have the material cost, you have a higher labor cost. Then once the grinding process is done, those air filtration devices have to run for usually at least 24 hours in that space without it being disturbed after they've cleaned everything. Samples are then taken, and unlike just like a floor tile, a sample would just be taken and looked at with a microscope where they set up in a lab on site. When they do TEM samples, those have to be either sent or taken to Ann Arbor to a lab, which then has 2 days to process it, write the report, get a report back to here to staff members that it is safe to go in that area. They can tear down the containment zone and move on. So just the length of all that and dealing with that really adds to it as well. So.
You said this is from the bond funds?
This is all coming from ESSER funds.
Okay, that was my question. Yeah. Since it's air quality, could we use ESSER funds?
Yeah.
Okay.
So again, you're seeing prevailing wages tied in there with all of that due to the state requirements too. So that is a little bit of a increase in cost. Total Environmental has done work for us. They were actually the company, I think, since I've been here in 6 years, we've had as many abatement contractors work for us. Total Environmental was the crew that abated the tunnel systems in the boiler room at Ella White. So we've seen their work. They were good to us.
I move to accept the bid from Total Environmental for the abatement of asbestos as Besser School.
Support.
Any further discussion? Can we do a roll call on this one, just for the high dollar amount, please?
Member Park?
Aye.
Member Hanson?
Aye.
Member Snow?
Aye.
Member MacArthur?
Aye.
Member Fritz?
Aye.
Member Lawson?
Aye.
Member Meyer?
Aye. Okay, thank you, motion carries. All right, Kurt, carry on. This is the Series 2, Phase 1 rebid project, consideration of glass and glazing rebid. And this is to award the glass and glazing contract for the base amount bid of $67,605 to Traverse City Glass for the glass and glazing work needed here at Besser.
Yeah, so just a quick brief scope of that. If you looked at or seen the plans to redo the secure entry here at Besser, we're not going out with the footprint or the foundation. As you came in, the main doors in the front, there is a secondary set of doors, which would be like the secure vestibule. That is actually going to get bumped further into that entry area, which create that space. It'll be a little bit larger, and then it will align with the office. So that's where the secure doors will be, just to jet to the left into the office. So that is for that scope of work with the doors, the hardware, and the glass, the films. That encompasses the main office in that area. As with all these last three bids, we've done everything we can. We feel like reaching out to other companies, looking at different products, what doors we want to use. These doors here will be a FRP door, which matches the front of what we see here with flush pole handles. So it's everything that we need to complete that portion of the project.
And is this bond dollars then with this one?
Correct. Yep.
Safe, warm, dry, safe.
Yeah, there's a lot to doors and door hardware, especially as we get into the electrified components. You're looking at an expert over there. Mr. Adam Keys ties into a lot of this. So if you want to talk door hardware, he's the connoisseur.
Okay. Yep. Yep, we need a motion for this one, please.
I'll offer the motion to award the glass and glazing contract for the base amount bid of $67,605 to Traverse City Glass for the glass and glazing work needed at Besser.
Support.
Okay. Can we just do roll calls for all these? Do you mind? Okay. We'll do a roll call for the rest of them, please. Thanks.
Member Hanson?
Aye.
Member Snow?
Aye.
Member MacArthur?
Aye.
Member Fritz?
Aye.
Member Lawson?
Aye.
Member Park?
Aye.
Member Meyer?
Aye. Okay, thank you. Motion carries. Moving on, motion, the consideration of casework rebid. Motion to award the casework contract for the base amount bid of $201,163 to Doors and Drawers for the casework needed at Besser Elementary School.
I'll offer that motion.
Support.
Good. Anything to add, or you good? Okay.
Anybody has any
Question?
Yeah.
I noticed everybody else had this one. What was the addendum number 1? Or no, I'm sorry. Yeah, addendum number 1.
For the doors and drawers?
Yeah, they were missing addendum number 1. I know often these things aren't a big deal, but I was just kind of curious.
Yeah, I follow it during the bidding process, and then it's been a little while. If I'm recalling, all these three items were put all in the same bid pack. So if I recall, I believe addendum 1 had to do with door hardware. We were still picking through some components and confirming what we wanted to see with what was presented. So I do believe that addendum 1 dealt with the door hardware. So at that point, it really doesn't affect the casework. So even though they should acknowledge it and check it, sometimes, if they go to look that it was for door hardware, the cap.
You're not worried about it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Good question. Thank you.
Did Spence Brothers want to make Christmas bonus?
Well, it's interesting to see. Sometimes you'll see that, and this is why so we're going out rebidding. So I think, you, from knowing you in your past too, you hear something goes out for rebid again. Why was it? Because nobody bid on it, because the first time no one bid, you need more bids, maybe no one will bid, maybe we'll get this.
Yep.
Or it just aligns with timeline, there can be various reasons. Doors and drawers, just looking at it simply, I think this is what they do. They do cabinetry, kitchens and stuff like that.
And Spence Brothers, that's not their...
Spence Brothers, they're more of a general contractor, while they have tradesmen that are capable of doing it, they may be subcontracting it out.
Sure.
They might have to bring more, they're already gonna be here doing some work. They'd probably like to entertain it, but they might have to pull in some more labor, especially in our time frame, from further away, and then you have hotel costs and stuff like that add up. There's a number of variables.
Yeah.
As far as the doors and drawers, we don't feel that they missed anything. We were hoping, I was hoping for like maybe 160,000, 170,000. Kind of thought that's, squeezing every drop out of the lemon. That's what I was hoping for.
But on a rebid.
Yeah. On a rebid, it's a lot of cabinetry. If you look at, don't have the number of classrooms in my head, but if you look at coming down these halls, the univents are tied into a lot of the metal cabinetry that is extended all the way along the exterior walls. So for the amount of cabinets that we're getting and countertops, if you've ever redone a kitchen, it's like putting a small car in your house once you finish the cabinets and countertops. So 200.
Most expensive room in your house.
Yeah, I want to say there's probably 400 to 600 feet of cabinetry here. So
I move to accept the bid from Doors and Drawers for the amount of $201,163.
Support.
Did we have a
We did
motion?
this one, yeah. We had the motion and support.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's all right. We were just in the discussion, so.
Stacy and Eric, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Missed that.
Thank you, though, yep. Okay, any further discussion? Okay, hearing none, now we can do a roll call.
Member Snow?
Aye.
Member MacArthur?
Aye.
Member Fritz?
Aye.
Member Lawson?
Aye.
Member Parr?
Aye.
Member Hanson?
Aye.
And Member Meinhardt.
Aye. Okay, thank you, motion carries. Last one, consideration of plumbing rebid. A motion to award the plumbing contract for the base amount bid of $58,944 to Weinkauf Plumbing and Heating for the plumbing work needed at Sanborn Elementary School.
I move to award the plumbing contract for the base amount bid of $58,944 to Weinkauf Plumbing and Heating for the plumbing work needed at Sanborn Elementary School.
Support.
Any discussion on this one? Okay, hearing none, roll call, please.
Member MacArthur?
Aye.
Member Fritz?
Aye.
Member Lawson?
Aye.
Member Parr?
Aye.
Member Hanson?
Aye.
And Member Snow?
Aye.
And Member Meinhardt.
Aye.
I didn't put your two.
Thanks. Okay, motion carries. Okay. Thank you, Kurt.
Yep, thank you.
And thanks for everyone for being flexible to not hearing that last Thursday and hearing everything and moving tonight, so we can get those going, so appreciate that. Human Resources update.
Then I will do a Samantha Wilson impersonation. She's having car trouble today, so we have a number of new hires. Support staff is Shara Williamson, instructional assistant at Thunder Bay. Jody Kamishek, instructional assistant at Thunder Bay. Karina Whitlow, instructional assistant at Thunder Bay. James Noble, instructional assistant at Thunder Bay. Jason Panknin, instructional assistant at Thunder Bay. Trisha Millard, payroll accountant at Central Office. Katie Hubbard, office assistant, registrar at Thunder Bay. Merrick Minton, custodian at Hinks and Besser Elementary. Elizabeth Kowalski, instructional assistant at Thunder Bay. And Cynthia Brusky, a float custodian at Alpena High School. Had a couple of resignations, Matthew Rodosi, an instructional assistant at Ella White. Kirsten Wool, instructional assistant at Thunder Bay High School, junior high, and Daniel Wahusky, no crying Mary, accounts payable clerk at central office. And then some retirements. Mary Doust, counselor at Alpena High School, effective June 30th, 2023, after 38 years of service. That is spectacular. Elizabeth Hartley, a fourth grade teacher at Wilson Elementary School, effective June 30th, 2023, after 8 years of service. And Lisa Sima, second grade teacher, Simi. Simi, I always get that, sorry. Simi, second grade teacher at Sanborn Elementary School, effective June 30th, 2023, after 27 years of service.
Thank you to those three for all their years of service, for sure. It's
I'm
amazing.
impressed that you got that one name. I was waiting for you to.
All of
Well, thank you.
All right, thank you. Gifts.
Yes. The Kiwanis Club of Alpena donated 83 dictionaries to Besser Elementary School for third grade students valued at $300. The Women's Joy Fellowship of First United Methodist Church donated 5 hats and 28 pairs of mittens to students in need at Besser Elementary School. Mrs. Ruth Rabo donated $25 to ACES Academy to support McKinney-Vento and at-risk students. VFW Post 2496 donated a 5x8 U.S. flag for the main entrance flagpole at Alpena High School. Kevin Hodge, news director at WBKB, donated $50 to the Thunder Bay Junior High School Creative Writing Book Publishing Project. Sherry Honeycutt, owner of Turn the Page, donated $50 to the Thunder Bay Junior High Creative Writing Book Publishing Project, and 2 book series collections valued at $125.17 to the Besser School Library. Justin Hinckley, publisher and editor of the Alpena News, donated $100 to the Thunder Bay Junior High School Creative Writing Book Publishing Project. Todd Poley, manager of Northeastern Window and Door, donated $100 to the Thunder Bay Junior High Creative Writing Book Publishing Project. Beth and Brian Strong donated $700 to the Thunder Bay Junior High School Creative Writing Book Publishing Project. Big Lots donated 41 hats and 12 containers of hand soap valued at $235, and a various assortment of school supplies valued at $400 to the students in need at Besser Elementary. United Way of Northeast Michigan donated the following: 2 dial-a-ride booklets to Ella White at $30, 3 dial-a-ride booklets to Thunder Bay Junior High at $45, and pocket file folders to Thunder Bay Junior High at $35. Gone to Pieces Quilt Guild donated 30 homemade quilted duffel bags valued at $750 to students in need at Alpena High School, and Tammy Werda donated 4 winter coats valued at $23 to students in need at Besser Elementary School. And I would offer the motion to accept the gifts listed above with gratitude and thank the donors in writing for the generous gifts.
Support.
Any discussion? Okay, all in favor of the motion, show of hands, please. Thank you, motion carries. And we are at the second opportunity for citizens and delegations to address the board. Okay, moving on, information and proposals, letters and communications, looks like we have none. So moving on, reports and information from the superintendent.
So I just want to thank again the board. You've had a week like no other. I appreciate your commitment and dedication, flexibility too. As you know, we had a workshop scheduled for Thursday that had to be canceled, and so we did some on-the-fly adjustments. I appreciate that. All that in a paycheck, so thank you very much. Driving in, I heard the news about the graduation rate, and we've been working on other issues, putting together our benchmarks reports. So we'll go through and just kind of present some of that at the March meeting, just throw out there again that our graduation rate that typically gets reported is somewhat misleading because we run alternative programs. We have early college, home partnership, things like that. So, it's not as easy as just a one number represents the whole district. But we can provide some updates on that. Along with that, just the flexibility, this February, we had a number of items like the policies and things that we were planning to address in February, but then as our schedule changed, we had to pull as much off of the agendas as possible so we can get to the work of the personnel issue. So things like the ESSER updates, the policies, and any other of those things that we had talked about doing in February, we'll put into the March meetings coming up there.
Can I ask a question about those?
Yeah.
Will those be the March 9th is the
Annual workshop, and we'll keep that just the straight annual workshop. And then on the March 13th workshop, that's where those things will be placed back to and then on the regular meeting for action steps. So we should be getting back into a routine. And then just, so a lot of the bids here approved were tied to our strategic plan, Safe Warm Dry Bond, and a lot of that work is being done here at Besser this summer. So we're excited about all of those updates being done. Again, you heard that we're using, saving money and also using ESSER funds where applicable to leave as much money as possible for the later stages of construction. I did send the board in my update just a kind of heads up. We're doing facilities and maintenance long-range planning with our central office cabinet tomorrow, I believe. And from that, we're just kind of looking at all of those things that we know need to be done over the next 5-10 years. And then kind of merging that with, or blending it with the bond work at the high school that's scheduled to come. So when we do start talking about the high school phase of the Safe Warm Dry Bond, we'll be pulling in some stakeholders, board members included, to kind of look at, what we want to do with any monies that may be left over that aren't already specified, such as plumbing, roofing, windows, secure entrances, and things like that. So we'll be putting out an invitation to you in the next couple of weeks here to kind of look at what we want to do, because that is coming up very quickly, and it's going to be a busy, exciting summer focused on the high school 2 summers from now. So, and with that, I'll turn it to Mary real quick for the school bus purchases.
So a couple years ago, we applied for the Clean Diesel grant and received 2 brand-new diesel buses and a propane bus. So we got a percentage back on the purchases of those, and that money was placed in the long-range maintenance fund and set aside for future bus purchases. We need to purchase 2 new buses this year to replace buses that are beyond repair and one that was totaled. So in talking with our mechanics, they would like gasoline buses versus diesel buses because of all the emissions control with the diesels is causing higher repair bills throughout the life of the bus than what a diesel would have been years ago. So they want to go with gasoline buses. They figure the reduction in the cost of repairs will cover the difference in the fuel prices. So, or the gas mileage anyways. So each gas bus costs $121,000, and there's enough money in the long-range maintenance to cover the purchase of 2. So, and these are pre-bid prices through MSBO, which is the Michigan School Business Officials. They pre-bid with Hoekstra, Holland, and Midwest, and Holland is the one that has the lowest bid out of this bid report. So that's the one that we would like to go with. I know one of their salesmen really well. They're a great company to work for or work with. I worked with them in a previous district, and they're really good to you. So just to let you know what the plans are. That money's already been set aside, so there's no like board approval for that. And they're pre-bid, so there's no approval for the bid. It was just an informational piece to let you know that we're finally going to spend that money that was set aside for this purpose.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone have any questions for Mary? Okay.
Thank you, Matt. My next update is on critical incident mapping, and I shared this with the board early February. Through Section 97D, we were awarded $31,000, and it's money tied to the critical incident mapping process. Critical mapping is, they do a satellite view of all of our facilities, and then they lay a grid over the facility map and identify rooms, entrances, roadways, all of those features to share with emergency responders so that they have that accurate information. They also then go into the buildings and highlight gas main shutoff valves, plumbing, electrical, things like that. Again, so anyone responding in any particular emergency has that information readily available. So we applied for this, I'm not sure, probably in the fall, early fall, and we received a bid or award for $31,000. We partnered with AMA RESA. They used this same company, Critical Response Group, to do their buildings already. And so we just thought that would be a good combined efforts where we're using the same, so our local authorities have the same mapping from the same company, and we just felt that that would be a good way to approach it. So the estimate for all of the buildings, including central office, the bus garage, and transportation center, and Sunset, comes out to $36,000. So we would be putting in $5,649 or $859 of our own money to do this. Nice thing about this is, as soon as we get this, 911 is ready to do what they do with our maps and put them out so that all of our agencies have them. They're well aware of this process and this company, and so it's just turning that over, and it just adds a nice level of, you look back at Oxford and 30-some agencies addressed it, and communication issues, mapping issues. This is a huge part of it and takes that worry out. Everyone has the same information in order to make those decisions and respond to it on. And finally, good news. You have the copy in your folder, and it'll be made available on the website. And just starting off with ACEs, I think there's a long-standing belief that ACEs is sort of a last stop, and when other things don't work, and in some cases that is true, but it's really becoming a destination for many of our students that are choosing a different academic environment. And if you want to see one of the greatest graduation ceremonies ever, ACES, I put it on your calendar and go and see and hear the stories of the kids that are succeeding against all odds. It really is encouraging, it's emotional, it's a positive experience. But you see here that they're out doing so much more than just academics. They're giving back to the community. They're going out and getting all sorts of experiences. So great things going on there. And then just on the Wilson, they were able to redo their ladies' night out, I think with a couple years delay, and raised $28,000, which is just amazing. So just great community support, a lot of great activities going on across the district.
Thank you. All right, information and questions from the board.
Back to last week's fund, is there some way we can release a little more information to the public involving, to try and squelch some of the, I hate to say it, misinformation that is running out there? think it was in church Sunday morning, somebody was asking my wife, well, about the rewrote tape. And no, the tape was not re-recorded over. You know, that is still very prevalent in the, and in fact, the one person that communicated to me by email said that it was said right in the meeting that it was wrote over, and I said, I answered them back, you misheard something then. I'm not sure what you heard or where you got that, but if we could clarify that a little bit, maybe that would help.
Yeah,
I don't know how that
thanks
would
for,
look.
we talked about that this morning in cabinet, and I have not, I was going to reach out on Friday to our attorney to kind of see what can we put out, and we just kind of thinking a summary of facts. You know, nothing that was discussed in closed, but kind of those open session, something along those lines. So, absolutely, I meant to reach out to her. I haven't had a chance yet, but
Yep,
I don't know
okay.
if you've
I'll
had
follow,
any
nope, I haven't.
conversations.
Yeah, I'll follow up with Katie too. And I have been, anytime I get an email, been responding to all the emails on behalf of the board, trying to clarify some of those too without divulging, you know, information that was in closed session, but I am responding and, you know, because people do deserve, you know, to have full transparency and be communicated with, so, but yeah, I'll follow up with Katie as well, so.
It never hurts to reiterate just precisely how much of the information was shared in closed and impress upon people the reason for us not divulging that is not to keep things secret, it's to follow the process and to protect everybody involved. I don't think we can say that enough times. So, but I agree, I think whatever we can share, let's share it.
Okay.
Okay.
The other thing that I had, I'd just like to thank all the staff that were there that night. I mean, Miss Moore and Miss Wilson, that was above and beyond what was in their payroll. And also the other administrators that were there and stayed.
I agree. I mean, we had our IT guys back there. I mean,
Mr. Keys back there.
you know, and
Miss
there was,
Hitchcock back there
there was a
too,
lot of
and,
staff that sat behind the curtain.
Yep.
that, You know, a lot of
And-
administrators and,
And they still had to get up in the morning, so.
yep.
Yes, they did.
So appreciate that.
I did share some here before the meeting that a volunteer who was collecting tickets for the basketball game that was happening at the high school that night said that she came up to me this morning. I ran into her and she said, if you need something to a high moment of that evening, that the concession stands at the high school for the basketball game made like 3 times the amount of money that they made from ticket sales or something crazy, the most they've ever sold at concession stands. She said, so maybe your board meetings needs concession stands, or you need to always time them with like sporting events. So I'm glad that, you know, everyone there in attendance, they were able to at least get some snacks because that was a long night, so. Yeah. Okay, well, I will follow up with Katie, so thank you for bringing that up. And I had on Saturday a roughly 6.5 hour board training that I participated in. And one of the things they mentioned, I forgot to bring my notes, I'm sorry, but that, and maybe you know, Leslie, that all the level 100 courses, other than 101, we can get reimbursed for.
Yes.
So if there's anything that you, in the catalog that you're interested in the 100 level courses, they are, we get to do those at no cost, so.
Yes, and I would ask that if you do, I will pay for those. It's easier to handle the reimbursement process if I pay for them upfront.
Anything else?
So Leslie, you're saying contact you about any, before I go ahead and do it?
We're working.
Sorry.
Okay. Well, hearing nothing else. March 9th is our annual board workshop, 5:30 PM at the board office. That's the rescheduled meeting from last week. March 13th is our monthly board workshop at 5:30 at the board office, which is our regular workshop meeting that we have every month, spring break. And March 27th will be the regular board meeting at 5:30 at Ella White. And with that, we will adjourn. Drive safe, everyone.